So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Before we start, for those of you that have been part of our Lunch and Learn series in the past, you know our housekeeping. Definitely stay on mute, keep your cameras turned off. We're going to take all of our questions through the chat feature, and I will be able to moderate them at the end of our session. So now that we have that off our plate, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for the Entrepreneurial Lunch and Learn offered by the Lawrence N. Field Center for Entrepreneurship at Baruch College. I'm Marlene Lee King. I'm the Executive Director of the Field Center. And for those of you who know, the Field Center for Entrepreneurship is a multifaceted division at Baruch College. We offer free services and programs for the entrepreneurial community. Today's Lunch and Learn webinar is presented today by Baruch alumnus Burt Welt. Burt is a graduate of Baruch College, class of 58. He's an experienced entrepreneur with a very interesting history, which we'll hear more about today. Burt has always been so gracious with his time and service back to his alma mater. He's presented workshops and talks for the Field Center in the past. He's a mentor for the executives on campus program at Baruch as well, and he advises students interested in particular career paths very related to computer science and CIS and some other technical related career paths. Burt, I want to thank you as always for being here with us once again for another Lunch and Learn by the Field Center. We're so happy to have you back. I would love if you could tell our audience a little bit more about yourself, and then you can take it away through this presentation and let us know a little bit about your history in entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Marlene. It's a pleasure being here, and thank everyone who's attending. Just a little bit of background. I was born in Bronx, New York, and grew up there in Manhattan, and attended the public schools in Bronx and Manhattan. And my first stop in college was at City College at Uptown Manhattan. I enrolled in the engineering school, and like a lot of young people my age, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I enrolled as an engineering student, and after taking a class in calculus, I decided I would never become an engineer, and that anything I would build would probably fall down. So I switched to Baruch and studied for a degree in accounting, which was where I had some experience having done some bookkeeping work for my family. While at Baruch, I worked in the treasurer's office of a New York Stock Exchange company for the full time I was there. And while you have to understand that in the years 1953 to 1958, there were no computers, there were no adding machines, there were abacuses and a few other tools, mainly pencil and paper. But as experience is a great teacher, and as I look back on it, working in an office where I worked with figures with pencil and paper, and observing top executives of a New York Stock Exchange company, that was very beneficial. It's one of those experiences that you have that you don't really understand that you're having them, but it sort of gets locked into your memory. And to answer probably a question somebody's going to have, that I always want to be an entrepreneur, I hadn't the slightest idea. I grew up wanting to be a baseball player who was playing for the New York Yankees. Since I grew up in the Bronx, that was my team. Well, when I graduated with my degree in accounting, as most graduates with a degree in accounting, I took a job with an accounting firm. But after 1 month, I resigned. Something told me accounting wasn't for me. So making use of my contact with this, where I'd worked while at Baruch, I got a job as a systems analyst in their systems department. Now, again, in the 1950s, there were no computers. That was fortunate for me because for the first time, I really learned how to do some original thinking. We were designing manual systems, and you really had to use everything in you to come up with solutions. I had fortunately, a very good boss who helped me mature in the field. And after 2 years, I made another decision, which was one of my better decisions. I answered an ad from IBM Corporation. Now, IBM at that time was the largest manufacturer of business computers, and they were just starting to come out with a new line of business computers, and they were opening up a data center in the Time Life building, in the basement. The entire basement was going to have 4 or 5 of their computer systems. Now, if you've ever seen a picture of a computer system from 50, 60 years ago, you know they weren't small. They were rather large. In any event, the data center was open 24 hours a day, and we hosted clients of IBM who came in from all over the world. Now, that's a big statement, all over the world. This was really the beginning of the computer age in the business world. And companies, as I said, came in from all over the world to test their programs on the model that they had purchased and were going to install. Myself and my fellow IBMers, we were there to help them work out the kinks. And in order to be able to do so, we went to one of IBM's many schools, which taught programming and how to use the computers. We were fortunate in that we were fully immersed. As I said, the data center was open 24 hours a day. And we really got to learn how computers work. And it was a very exciting period of time, not unlike the space age, because periodically there were advancements which everybody would say, wow, this is the next best thing that's coming out. And after about 1.5 years, somehow or other, a light bulb went on. There's got to be a business here. Everybody's coming in and they're looking to me for answers. And if I didn't have them immediately, I had to find them out. I said, you know, I'm not that much smarter than everybody else, but I've got a lot of experience. So I got together with 5 other IBM employees, and we decided to form a company. And in forming a company, I collected $20 from each of us and gave it to an uncle of mine who was an attorney. And he incorporated us in New York State. And I'll show you a couple of things that you get back we got back for our $120. This is a corporate seal. The seal official documents such as stock certificates. This is a stock certificate. It's the only thing we ever used for the $120. In any event, 2 of us left the company at the end of my second year at IBM. And we took advantage of our very unique position in the data center. Every company that came in to test their programs came in with an IBM salesman. Well, when we started our business, we got IBM World Trade Corporation, which was the company that handled IBM's clients all over the world, other than the United States. They were located on 42nd Street. The two of us left, and we did our work either at the client's office or in our apartments. Now, one of the advantages of an intellectual entrepreneurship is that you don't need a lot of major assets to get started. It's mainly all in your head. And we started working, as I said, in our homes and in the client's office. And one by one, over the next 6 to 8 months, the other 4 IBMers joined us. And they joined us as they came out, we added clientele, because at that time, there was definitely a lack of expertise in the field. At the end of a year and a half, the company had grown to 25 professionals. As I like to tell people, we had the largest unpaid sales force in the United States. As I said earlier, all the companies, and these were all Fortune 500 type companies, because they were the only ones that could afford to either buy or lease the computers. They sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions, or rented for many thousands of dollars a month. So we grew rather quickly. And as I said, after a year and a half, we were a company of 25. Well, you learn a lot as you go along. And one of the things that we learned was you should never sign a fixed price contract, because we signed one with American Express, and we ran into some financial difficulties. At the end of 3.5 years, we wound up selling the company to another public company who was in a different area of the computer industry. It was very popular for a number of years, and it was called computer leasing. It was strictly a financial numbers game, and they raised millions of dollars to purchase computers and lease them to their clientele. Well, one of the things that you get when you sell your company, generally speaking, is an employment contract. So myself and my partners, we all got 2-year employment contracts. And after 2.5 years, 5 of us left the company. One of the things you learn is that every corporation has their own culture. And we had developed our culture, and it really didn't agree with the culture of the company that had bought us out. So I call my next 4 or 5 years my years of wandering in the desert. Now, when I was with my first company, I met a lot of people because I was, negotiating with them and setting up contracts and making an awful lot of contacts. The first job that I got, because I now had to earn a living again, I had started a family, and I had to bring in the weekly paycheck. Well, the first client, or the first job I got, was a former client in the brokerage field, and I became the manager for their computer department. But after 6 months, I got fired. Why? The managing partner had a friend who had been let go by another company, and he decided he would give him the job I had. So I left. Uh, my next job, I went to another client. I knew Henry Taub, who had founded Automatic Data Processing, the payroll company. I had been a client. Nothing like having past clients that you know. Well, they were opening up on Wall Street, and I got a job with them. But one of the things that happen when you have your own business is you get set in the ways you like to run things. And it's very difficult to accept the culture of a company that you go to work for. Well, I lasted a year and left. I then went into an accounting partnership down in Florida with a friend of mine. That lasted about a year. Decided doing accounting was still not the thing for me. I love doing accounting for my own business, but not for others. Well, I came back, and I had kept in contact with my former employer when I was at Baruch, at this New York Stock Exchange company, the treasurer. And I met with him, and he threw out an idea to me. He had two immigrants from Europe who had started a unique business. They had become entrepreneurs in their own way. They were auditing import freight bills for overcharges. And if they found an overcharge, they would make a claim on behalf of their client, and whatever they got back as an overcharge, they would share 50-50 with them. Well, they were familiar with an industry called customs brokerage and freight forwarding. And they had this idea. They wanted to computerize the import process, which was rather technical and complicated. If you have any familiarity with the US government, they don't do things in a very simple way. And fortunately for me, they created a potential business in computerizing their documentation. And my eyes lit up because this was the perfect application. The government set the standards for what the processing should be. Well, in my first business, I had developed applications for smaller companies who couldn't afford their own computer. And I developed programs for portfolio management, rental billing, sales analysis, etc. But if we went to another company who might use any one of those applications, they all had their own ideas of what they wanted. So you were reinventing the software. Unlike today, there are packages which you get, and what's in the package, what you see is what you get. Well, as I said, United States Customs set down the rules for what should be in the documentation that was produced. And I jumped at the chance to become the technical partner in the firm, and the stock exchange company put in the investment money to start us up, because we were going to have to not only develop the software from scratch, but once we got started, we were going to have to process for any clients that we got. Well, that company was started in 1971, and it was shut down in 2020, 50 years later. We never became a large company. One of the things that I never imagined at the time that I first got involved was that there were 5 or 6 other companies who were all zeroing in on the same potential target. which was completely unlike my first company where we had literally no competition, which is great if you want to grow quickly. Well, we didn't grow quickly, but we grew slowly, and we became a factor in a small market. And as I said, the company lasted 50 years, so that's not a bad lifetime for most corporations. And that's about where I am now. I've learned a lot about companies. When I'm mentoring, I try to explain some of the factors that go into becoming successful in business. And for those of you who have any aspirations of becoming an entrepreneur, or just learning how to become a more valuable employee, I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Burt. Your story, I've heard your story before, but every time I hear it, it always reminds me that this entrepreneurship journey has a lot of ups and downs, and it could be challenging at times. And so folks like you that mentor and try to at least share those wisdoms along the way for our students, it's really important and it's helpful, to say the least. I'm trying to change some of the settings. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think that's better. We have a couple of questions, and I'd love to take any more from the audience as well. Go ahead and put that in the chat. But so far, one of the questions that we have is, if someone was interested in getting into stock exchange or marketing analytics, what type of advice would you suggest? How should one go about seeking employment or internship opportunities?
Well, as I usually tell my mentees, I've been out of the loop so long, I'm not familiar with the latest techniques for finding employment. When I was in the field, the New York Times had many pages of jobs wanted ads, and that's how people found the job. They would go through it. They were categorized: accountants, technology, medical, whatever. And if you saw an ad that you'd like, you'd send your resume in or contact them, whatever was in the ad. Now, I spent 50 years answering the technical questions of my clients, because in my second business, one of the things that was necessary was to provide a hotline for our clients, because it was a government product that we were preparing. The government was always changing the rules, and when they changed the rule, we had to change the software. And so not only did I have to learn how to answer the question over the telephone, we also well, let me digress. When we started the company, we were using our own computers to process the data of our clients that we got. You see, again, computers were still very expensive starting in the 1970s and the early 1980s. And so the clients would send us in documents, and I had what are called key punch operators who would prepare the data. They would key it in and produce punch cards, which we would then process into our computer system and prepare the documents, and then the final document would be picked up by the client. I think one of the things that I was most proud about was the fact that as things changed in the field, and PCs started to become more reliable, more prevalent, and lower in price, than the computers that I was working on. I had to come up with a new way of doing business. And what I did was take our software for the mainframe and produce it to be what was called turnkey. IBM had come out with smaller, faster, and less expensive business computers. They were still more expensive than PCs, but PCs back in the 1970s, 1980s were not very reliable for business. They were great for word processing and spreadsheets, but not for doing serious business processing. And we turnkeyed it, and I then proceeded to rebuild my my company after having lost two of my biggest clients, representing 80% of my business. This is one of the fun things that you have to face when you're in business, is losing a client. I had a major department store chain that was merged into another department store chain, and they decided that they were going to terminate my services because they were processing their documents elsewhere. And so this was a necessary effort on my part to reconstruct the company. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of, the fact that I was able to make a company that lost 80% of its revenue in 1 year and reinvent it. I call it my 2.5. And we built up the company. As I said, it lasted for another 20 odd years. And
80% of lost business is a true setback. How did you keep yourself motivated to keep going forward?
Well, I wanted to eat and I had a family to support.
That's a great.
And that is a motivating factor for, I think, a lot of businesses that have been started. If you do as much reading as I do, you come across stories about somebody that lost their job, but they like to bake and they had a terrific recipe for something or other, and people started saying, well, why don't you make some for me? And it just grew and grew, or they made some object or other that people liked. And look, the Hewlett Packard, which was one of the largest computer companies, was developed in a garage by two, I think, Stanford University professors, Steve Jobs and his buddy Steve Wozniak. Developed their first Mac computer in a garage. You get inspired by things that you want to do, or that for some reason you have to do. And not everybody is successful, but there's an awful lot of businesses that grew out of those circumstances. And if you there's if any of you want to see a lot about entrepreneurship, there's a TV show called The Shark Tank, and people come with ideas before this panel of self-made millionaire billionaires and try to pitch them to invest money in them. And some of them get investment from them, and some don't. But the idea has to start somewhere. As I say, you just never know when some time is right. The change is a word that I use all the time with my mentees, and you see it in publication all the time. You see the word or the phrase climate change. That's another one of my pet hobbies, so to speak. The world is always changing, and you have to be ready to grab a hold of whatever that change might be. You know, as I point out, Bill Gates didn't incorporate Microsoft until 1975. I incorporated it in 1962. Now, if he had tried to incorporate, he would have gone nowhere because there were no PCs. PCs didn't start coming out till years after I started my first business. So, but when he came along, they were starting to come out, and he took the ideas he had and the talents that he had, and made, as we know, a multi-billion-dollar corporation out of it. And Steve Jobs, he put together the first Mac with parts that companies were preparing for, I guess, for hobbyists, and you know, things that are good ideas have a way of growing, but the time has to be right. And if you hit the right idea at the right time, you know, you'll be a success. But there's no secret formula. If I had the answer to that, I would market it. But I don't know the answer to that.
You had mentioned at the beginning that your first company at that time had no competition.
Right.
Why didn't you consider opening another one within the same field? Was there any reason in particular?
Yeah. Our time had come and passed. There were, you know, as I told you, we grew to 25 employees, and we actually spawned other companies because our people were working closely with our clients, and many of them said, well, if these guys can do it, I can also. So they would get the account that they were assigned to as their first client, and go off and start their own company. But you know, when you have a blank piece of paper, it's a lot easier to get started. You know, I was no longer at IBM. I didn't have all the IBM salesmen knocking on my doors. There were thousands of people who had now gotten into the field of programming and systems design, and you know, there was just no easy way of doing it. And of course, you know, when you're 26 years old and you don't know any better, you jump into something and you sink or you swim. And as I said, the water wasn't too deep, and we were able to swim. So it's timing, it's luck, it's talent. It's a combination of things. As I said, you can write a book about how to be successful, but there's so many ingredients that have to come into play. As I said, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they were successful. And not that they probably wouldn't have been successful in something else, because they're undoubtedly, you know, brilliant people. But for them to succeed in what they succeeded, the climate had to be right for them, what they wanted to do. And as I say,
yeah, those are really great points. It leads me to my next question. You've been in these businesses and in this game for a very long time, and you've been a part of some of the companies that are household names these days. Have there ever been any initiatives for many of these companies that back when you were there in the early days, that here's an innovative idea and everybody says, oh, that's not going to work, but today it's a standard product that's part of their suite of offerings? Is there anything that stands out for you?
Well, it's the word change. You know, I probably have a building named after me. If the stock market would invest money the way they've done for the last 20 years in anything that had the word computer in it and it looked like it could be successful. But when I started, the stock market was a very dull place. And computers were new. They weren't romantic. Then, they had, hundreds of potential clients. As I said, our clients were Fortune 500 companies because they were the only ones that could afford the computer product. Nowadays with PC, well, let me say, when I started, a rough estimate of a company's budget was 2/3 hardware and 1/3 people. Okay, that's a big difference, right? Nowadays, probably hardware is probably no more than 10% of the budget, and everything else is people. And with all the tools that have been developed, and all you have to do is look at all the social media, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Twitters. All of this stuff became so easy for somebody with a great idea to develop because now they had the tools, which were inexpensive, and things were so much easier. As I say, it's my favorite word, change. Things are changing all the time, and I tell my mentees, you got to look out for change because not only can it reward you, but it can also penalize you. And the buyer beware. You have to know what you're getting into or what you're getting out of, and it's a whole different world.
It is a different world, and that actually leads to our very recent question. If you had to examine the current technical innovation developing in today's world, where do you see it going?
Well, every time we get to a certain point, people say, well, that's as far as you can go. And then somebody comes along. Before all the search engines came out, there was one that everybody thought was the end all of end alls. And there's always somebody with a new idea that, well, that's how civilization has advanced. And now the tools that one has are so tremendous for somebody wanting to start something. I recently had dinner with an old friend, and when I say old, I've been around a few years. Her son had gone to the University of Pittsburgh, probably 20 years after me, and he developed a software product. I forget what it is, but I was told that he's still in the same business he started with this one software package, and it's on its 14th edition. So whatever he developed, he's still making a living out of. And I also went on a trip once with somebody who had a scientific package with formulas and whatnot that he marketed to a very limited marketplace, but it was unique enough that he made a business out of it, and it grew enough that he even had to hire an employee. So there's all sorts of opportunities out there if you keep your eyes open and see the possibilities. And as I say, the word changed. The world is always changing, and you can grab onto something along the way.
But entrepreneurship in itself is not for the faint of heart. And your story is pretty fearless. And our audience wants to know, Did you have any fear at the very early stages, quitting your job and starting your own business?
No, as I said, I was young, I was single, uh, and it was exciting, and I saw an opportunity. I said, you know, nobody's doing what I wanted to do. I mean, that you can't get a better starting condition. That when my only regret looking back at it is I probably could have grown the company even that much bigger if I were more sales oriented. We probably had 100 different clients because when we hired somebody to work on a project, they were there for months at a time. And there are thousands of big companies, not tens of thousands, but thousands. But you get immersed in building your company. Actually, the thing that intrigued me about my second company was what I tried developing at my first company. The entrepreneur in me looked at the way that our company was running, and I said, we've got all these technical people, and we're paying them at the time, top dollar. I won't even mention the price. It's so little you could do better babysitting. But with inflation, rates have gone up. But when we got an assignment and they were on the job, they were generating income for the company. Now, when you have 25 people and 5 to 10 of them come off an assignment and they come back to the home office and they're sitting around waiting for the next assignment, you're still paying them because you can't afford to lose them. The job is to keep that pipeline filled with new business assignments. But that's a challenge in and of itself. And so I had this idea, which I started. I said, well, our main clientele are the ones with deep pockets. There are lots of companies out there who aren't that big and can't afford, the thousands of dollars a month to rent or buy a computer. But they've got an application that would prove helpful to them. And one of my more enjoyable applications was I was introduced to a money manager, an investment advisor, and I developed one of the first, may have been even the first for all I know, portfolio management packages. And this was a client even after I started my second client, they came back to me, and I had them as a client for almost 40 years. And then there was a rental billing package. There's a big complex on the East River called Tudor City. It's a series of buildings, rental buildings. And I was introduced to them and developed a rental billing package. And for the Anti-Defamation League, for a few that I still remember, we developed some sort of a membership package, all sorts of packages. But as I say, one of the problems with the packages, well, there was no package, with the applications, is everybody had different ideas. And it was really almost mandatory that they be able to do it on their own computer, which wasn't the case. We were doing the processing for them. So when I was introduced to what became my second company, my eyes lit up because this was great. There's, thousands of potential clients, not millions, thousands. and the government sets the standards of what has to be produced. So I wouldn't have to fight the battle of changing the program, 10 clients, 10 different versions of it. So things change. You learn an awful lot when you're faced with making decisions and with changing times. One of the things that I learned was that the world has to be ready for what you have to offer. Very large companies, may be ready because the size and scope of what they have to do is so large. But in my second company, it took us 6 or 7 years to really get off the ground because most of the potential clients were very small. They were as small as one-man operations. So I had one-man operations as a client, and I had Fortune 500 companies as a client. But to make the scope of the company large enough to be profitable, I had to wait until the industry matured to the point, and this is hard for most people to believe these days, people didn't understand computers. They were afraid of them. They backed away from them. They were set in their ways. And it takes time for change to take place until it got to the point where they all knew they had to computerize or they weren't going to last. So
Right. You bring up a very interesting point about the world has to be ready, right? And so how did you go about finding the clients that were ready for what your company had to offer? How did you acquire your clients?
Well, as I said, in the first company, the IBM salesman literally came to us and said, can you do some work for ABC company? In my second company, it was really pretty easy. There were a limited number of companies that were in the business of customs brokerage or freight forwarding. And there was also a limited number of companies that did their own customs brokerage. They were mainly large department stores or in the retail industry itself. And so it was easy enough to seek them out. I couldn't Google them at those times because Google wasn't available, but they were pretty knowable as to who they were. And as I said, my major problem is that 5 or 6 other small companies had started at the same time I did, so there was competition for them. Otherwise, I would have grown a lot faster. But I had it once, so I guess I wasn't entitled to it a second time.
As we're getting close to closing our session today, I do want to ask one final question about what advice you would give or to those seeking to follow within a similar path, or also what is the most given advice you're giving to the students you mentor today? There must be a trend that you're seeing, especially based on your own experience as well.
Well, I don't know if there's a trend. There are always opportunities because the world is always changing. All right. Again, I keep going back to that word change. If you don't pay attention to it, at some point it's going to kick you in the rear end. You got to be inquisitive. You got to get involved in things. So you got to speak to people. You never know where the next idea is going to come from. And what you got to do is look at all the PC applications that are out there. Mark Zuckerberg didn't have every great idea. He's been buying up a lot of the great ideas. So not everybody has the insight to see opportunity. Otherwise, I want to become an entrepreneur. I have all this competition out there. It's you just got to be inquisitive. You got to keep your mind open, and you got to look at things critically and see whether it fits what your abilities have to offer. And as far as matching up, in my age, I read the AARP magazine, and every once in a while, there's an old guy like myself who comes along. They write an article about him. He started doing something, inventing a product. Well, you have Amos's cookies. You have Uncle Sander's chicken fried, Southern fried chicken. They came up with ideas at a late age, and they became household words. So you just have to have the right. Not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur, and you can certainly be a success as an employee, and you get involved in a company, and your abilities match the needs of the company, and you can become successful that way. As for myself, my personality as it developed, I was rewarded by being an entrepreneur because I like to make decisions. There are a lot of people that don't like to make decisions. I had absolutely no problem making decisions. I used to drive my partners crazy because if I decided on something, I would go ahead and do it. Right or wrong. Am I going to have my failures? Yes, but as I point out about the word failure, you can learn more from your failures than you are from your successes.
And that's actually a really great way for us to end the session, because our next week's session, not next week, in 2 weeks, our session is actually about the failures and learnings to be a successful entrepreneur. And so we're probably going to touch more on that topic with our presenter for next week as well. Burt, I want to thank you so much, as always. It's always so much wisdom coming from your presentations and listening to you and understanding what this whole journey was for you in entrepreneurship. And I want to thank you so much for sharing this all with us today. We actually still have a lot of questions from others. When I send out this recording to everyone attended, do you mind if I share with them some contact information for you?
Please do. If they have any questions, give them my email, Burt, B-U-R-T, Welty, W-E-L-T-E, @gmail.com. Be happy to answer any questions that they have. And I'll even send them my famous A to Z list of attributes for being successful.
Yes, I think that will be great. Actually, I will get that from you. I'll include it, and I will make sure everyone has it. And if they want to reach out for more wisdom from Burt, I think that would be a great way to do it. Thank you so much, everyone. You will get an email with the recording from today. It will also be posted on our website. And I thank you so much for joining us. Hope to see you again in 2 weeks for our next session. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.